Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Good evening and happy Mardi Gras. You're watching another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We're live from our Pontchartrain production studios, and we're looking forward to another great show as always. Tonight, one person on the panel. Jeff Duncan of The Athletic is with us, and we'll talk Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. We'll run the gamut tonight here on the program. Without further ado, let's head to our guest, Jeff Duncan. Jeff, welcome back to the show. I know you've been super busy. We're going to tell the folks a little bit about that. But first of all, tell us about The Athletic and how that venture's going.
Yeah, it's going great, Eric. We've gained a ton of subscriptions in the local market, and very excited. I mean, it's been a really good year to be in the New Orleans sports business, as you know. I mean, we've had a ton of things to write about. And with the Zion Williamson emergence, I think that's only going to become a bigger storyline. So I'm really looking forward to getting out and covering more of him because I don't know if the New Orleans market's seen anything like this since maybe Pistol Pete.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That kind of interest level. As big as Chris Paul and Anthony Davis were, they weren't like this kid.
No.
And so, I think it's just been a remarkable time. And if you go online, find our site, The Athletic, we've got a lot of great local writers. Everybody's local, even though our company's national.
Right. You've written one book about the Saints.
Two, actually.
Two books about the Saints. Tell us those two books, titles of those two books, because there's another one that's coming down here now, right?
Yeah, that's what I've been working on. That's what I've been so busy with. The publication date is going to be October 13th. It's called Peyton and Breeze, the men behind the greatest offense in NFL history. And that's the argument I'm making in the book. But I'm also telling people, and the most fascinating part of this new book is about how the sausage is made, how they put together the game plan every week, and what goes into making the Saints as great an offensive machine as we've seen. And I think you could make the argument, other than maybe the 49ers under Walsh in Montana, they've done it for longer now. This is 14 years of Breeze and Peyton. They've broken every offensive record in the book. And why? How have they done this? What's the synergy like between Sean Payton and Drew Brees? And it's been fascinating for me. And hopefully, I think the readers will find the same thing once they get a chance to read it.
Before I move on, because I want to ask you a question off of that. The other two books, for folks that are out there.
I'm sorry. The first book was called Tales from the Saints Sidelines, a collection of little anecdotes about the team, all the way back to the beginning. And I was blessed to have early interviews with some of the greats, Dave Dixon, and people that were a part of the founding of the franchise. So that's a fun read, and that's an easy one I would recommend. And the other one's called From Bags to Riches, which is about the post-Katrina, storyline between the Saints, the city, and that really, I don't know if we'll ever see another story like that. Even if the Saints win another Super Bowl, it won't be like that.
Not again, when you talk about the synergy between the city and the team, and what the team meant for the city and what the city meant for the team.
Right. It was just magical. I mean, everyone that experienced it, and I was just back at the Super Bowl down in Miami 10 years later, and I was having a lot of flashbacks from covering that that week. And it's not a great Super Bowl city. I can't believe they continue to go back to Miami, other than the weather being fabulous. And they have great event space down there. That's one thing they do
South Beach is nice, but it's so hard to get to.
And the traffic is a nightmare. And I think anyone would tell you, and especially all my colleagues in the media, that New Orleans is the best site because we have all those things, and we don't have any of the downside, which is, when you have the Super Bowl in Miami, it's really much a regional event. They
Yes.
have hotels up in Fort Lauderdale, some down in Miami.
Right.
It's spread all over the place, and you don't get a real feel for the game being there like you do when it's here.
It's true. When we broadcast live from Miami when I was with 690, we did the full week down there from Radio Row, and I'm sure it was the same this time. It's in Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
So, I mean, you're in Fort Lauderdale. We stayed on South Beach. So by the time, I mean, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, not bad getting back and forth. But Thursday to Friday, you better forget it was gridlock. I mean, you could get around. Meanwhile, here, you could walk wherever you need to go. Literally, if you're doing Radio Row at the convention center, you walk there, and then, of course, when you're done, you're going to the French Quarter. You have the ability to walk to go see where the teams are going to be practicing. If you had to cover the team to go to crisscross the entire city of Miami, it is rough. And that's why, again, again, it's been, at least there's a rumor out there now, they're going to start taking a hard look at trying to do these rotations once again, and New Orleans will be in that rotation, where, again, we can get the game maybe every instead of every decade plus, maybe get it within maybe 7 years or so. Maybe a California one, Florida, or maybe one in Texas with Dallas and Houston, New Orleans, and then maybe a wild card.
And I could see that happening because we're going to come to an end of all these new stadiums.
Yes.
And once that happens, once we cycle through that, we'll kind of be status quo as far as stadiums go, and they'll go back to a rotation.
Right,
Makes
and of
sense.
course, I forgot one, Vegas, which we know
they will be in the mix.
They're definitely going to be in the mix.
They will be in the mix. But one thing real quick about
Sure.
this book, that I think Saints fans are really going to enjoy it. I mean, think about it, Eric. Drew and Sean both wrote books after the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Back in 2009, 2010. Well, I mean, a lot's happened since then. It's been over a decade now of records, accomplishments, a lot of great wins, a lot of incredible comebacks and things to write about. Also, how they've been able to keep this thing from going stale.
Yeah.
I was good friends with Mike McCarthy when he was here with New Orleans Saints. It went south on him in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Why has that not happened here? Mike McCarthy's a great coach. I think he's going to do great in Dallas. It went south on Andy Reid in Philadelphia.
Yes, it did.
It's very difficult to do what Sean Payton and Drew Brees are doing and to continue to evolve while all these defenses are trying to stay ahead of you, and they've managed to do it here.
Right. And to your point, when you start talking about that, you look at, again, how cutting edge this offense was when it came into the league in 2006. But look at, again, how they've changed, the offenses and defenses within the division, trying to keep up with the Saints. Look at what they've done around the NFL as well, with, again, either teams trying to capture some of what they do, the concepts, or, again, trying to defend them. Getting players, defense, getting more defensive backs on the field, et cetera. So, again, they've been cutting edge to the point that, they've kind of changed the way teams are playing, not just within their division, but within the NFL as well.
Yeah, and the thing that I've really come to appreciate during the research process and doing as many interviews as I've done with people on the staff inside the building is just how hard they work, how much time they put in. And I know, look, all NFL staffs work hard.
Yes.
They all work hard. These guys go even farther. You can talk to coaches that are now with the Saints that have been in other teams. No one grinds like this staff. It's one of the secrets to their success. Their attention to detail, how much they put into a game plan, how much they put into finding what they call the golden nugget, the code cracking of the opponent, and finding, say, some little flaw in the defense or a weakness on a cornerback. It's amazing.
We see it all the time, right?
Yes, but these guys take it to the 9th degree. And the other thing that's really impressive about it is because they have Pete Carmichael, Joe Lombardi, Curtis Johnson, these coaches have been around for a long time.
Yes.
They have so much experience, they're able to morph the game plan every week and almost come up with a new game plan every week. And because you got a quarterback that's been there that long, you can execute that. You can't do that in other teams with not the coaching staff that's been together that long, or the quarterback that's been together that long. It's a very unique situation. And I think once Drew Brees does retire, and I know we'll probably talk about that soon, once he does retire and they do have a new quarterback in there, it's going to change because they're not going to have someone that can pull off what Drew Brees can pull off.
Two things. Number one, to your point, we could think back since Peyton and Brees has been here, and how many times you've seen a certain play that taken advantage of a certain player, how they play. We go back to ambush, okay? What they saw in ambush and how they were able to make that work. When it comes, we kind of replayed that with the 10-year anniversary of the Saints being in the Super Bowl. So to your point, we see that all the time with this offense. From your standpoint, being a guy that's covered this team for as long as you have, to be able to get in and embed yourself to be able to write this book? How much has this helped you really maybe understand what goes on behind the scenes, understand the concepts within this offense?
It's been tremendous for me. It's been a very valuable learning experience. I thought I knew what went into an NFL game plan. I had no idea. It's amazing to me the amount of work they put in, and Drew Brees. And I think that's something important for people to know. I know we all talk about how much money Drew Brees makes. He's the hardest working person in the building. I mean, in the entire building, business ops, football ops, everyone will tell you that. He's there longer than anybody else. He's there longer than the coaches in many respects. What he does to put into each week the game plan, the work he puts in, the mental load he takes on, I think that's what he was actually, when he was pondering retirement, I think the mental load and the exhaustion that it takes for him mentally is what he was considering, not the physical. Everybody thinks, oh, he's 41, right. The physical toll. It's not the physical toll, it's the mental grind. The getting in there at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday and not leaving oftentimes till midnight. And he does that every week, and he's been doing it every week for 19 years. Right. And he does it all the time. And he never takes the shortcut, even after 19 years. Right. He's never taken a shortcut. It's mind-boggling, and it's very impressive, and it's very unique. We're never going to see another player like Drew Brees come through that building. We may see some great talents, but no one that puts in the amount of work that he puts in. It's why he's been so great. Really,
the full combination of everything, right? I mean, you talk about the accuracy, you talk about the ability, obviously, to be a quarterback in the NFL. He is, but then you talk about the cerebral part, and then you talk about the work ethic. Right. I mean, it's the total package.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's three prongs to his greatness, his talent. I think that gets overlooked a lot. It does. I mean, he's a phenomenal talent.
He's an incredible athlete.
Yeah, incredible athlete and talent. I mean, he's got incredible arm talent, the ability, the accuracy you talk about, the fundamentals. I mean, he can go on and on about the kinetic chain of throwing motions and stuff. I mean, he's an expert in that. But he's got phenomenal athletic ability. I mean, he's been a great quarterback his entire career, but he's also got the work ethic that goes into that. And then I think the intelligence, the ability to process, which is so hard to evaluate in quarterbacks. It's one of the most difficult things, I think, for scouts to determine. And I think that's where he got overlooked even as much as his athletic ability and his height was. No one knew how he could process. And that stands out to me in this book, is just his ability to get into a game when it's hectic. There's a lot of pressure. A lot of people can't think straight, and he can think so clearly and get the Saints into the right play, out of the wrong play, and do this while there's so much pressure and everybody else is kind of panicking. He's like an air traffic controller, the calm guy making the right decisions at the line of scrimmage. It's been a big reason why they've been so successful.
No doubt about it. Let's talk a little bit about Brees. He officially returns now. I've talked about him this week on the show, and look, I'm one that has always been in the camp of you don't push the Hall of Famer, the greatest player in the history of the franchise, out the door. Okay, if he wants to play and he can still play at a high level, because I don't think he's a player that hangs on. I think he's a player that once he realizes that either his arm strength is diminishing or he can't get it done at the high level he is, that he walks away. But the question is, does this franchise ask him, hey, how much longer? Do you want to play 1 year, 2 years? I know within the building it's always been said he can leave when he's ready. But when you're losing a guy like Bridgewater, who's going to go into free agency now, and you have no real heir apparent there, although, again, a lot of people, I know you included, feel that Taysom Hill could be the next quarterback here, but he's still an unproven commodity where Bridgewater is not. Do you think the Saints will, whether it's public, whether it's private, hey, Drew, how long do you think? They're going to make the contract. It's going to have dummy years on it where they can void those years because they got to spread the cap number. But do you think they'll try to put a number on him saying 1 year, 2 years? How much longer do you think you're going to play?
Well, I think there's two different things there. I think one, there's the contract, and then there's also just the unwritten conversations they're going to have with him verbally about how long what he's thinking. But I can tell you, Drew, I think is seriously thinking 1 year at a time. I know he's said that for the last few years, but I think that he means that. I think he's earnest. I think for the first time this year, he seriously thought about retiring. I don't think he ever seriously thought about it before. And I think there's a couple things feeding into that. One, I think there's some things going on away from football in the network broadcasting world.
They want to throw money at him right now,
Yes, he is the hottest commodity in the business. Yes. He can make roughly $10 million a year being an analyst for some of these networks. That's a lot of money. It's not quarterback money, but your brain's not getting scrambled on Sundays once a week. And we talked about the mental workload that he puts in. He can have more time with his family. So that's a very attractive, I think, option for him post-playing career. The timing of that's feeding into this because Monday Night Football is getting ready to go back to the networks, probably ABC. They're wanting to make a splash. He becomes a huge pawn in this negotiating game. So that's why I think he seriously talked about it and thought about it. But I think ultimately that job's going to be there for him next year. And I think probably this will be his last year just because I think the timing of the broadcast stuff is going to feed into it. So I think it'll work itself. They have a great relationship. They're always on the same page. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where there's going to be a problem between Drew Brees and the organization. I think he's going to want to do what's best for the organization and what's best for, obviously, for his family. But I do think what feeds into this, and I know we're going to talk about Taysom Hill, but Drew Brees and Taysom Hill have become very close.
Yes.
They're closer probably than any other quarterback Drew Brees played with. I think Drew Brees really respects Taysom Hill. And I think part of that would actually feed into his maybe retirement. Because I think he would feel good about letting the organization, leaving it in good hands with someone that he respects, someone that I think he thinks can be an heir apparent to him. And I think that might actually facilitate things in the long run. Because I think he really cares about the New Orleans Saints organization and wanting to see it succeed. And I think it would be easier for him to move on with someone like Taysom Hill than if there was no answer there.
I get it all the time. I know you get it all the time. Brees got to take a pay cut. Brees got to play for less money. They only got a smaller window here now for a Super Bowl. He's got to play for less. I'm of the opinion he's already played for less. You know, most quarterbacks were getting around $30 million the last year. He took 25. Do you anticipate him taking less money this year so that they can re-sign a Kamara or they can re-sign another player, or they can go out and get him some weapons that he needs in the offense?
Yeah, I think he'll take a little less. I think he's going to still be a big number. The way I always look at Drew Brees is very simple in his contract is you start with Drew Brees and then you build out around him.
Right.
So, I mean, it starts there, and whatever that number is, then you figure out what doesn't work. But it starts with him, and I think that justifiably so. He's the most important player on the team. He's the best player on the team. Everything goes because of him. So I think if it comes in around $20 million a year, it's probably going to be about right, maybe 25. I don't know. The cap's going to go up. They've got some flexibility. There's some other things they can do. I don't think signing Drew Brees for $25 million a year is going to prevent them from doing what they want to do. And I think that's where people are maybe taking it to the extreme or looking at it the wrong way. They're assuming if Brees comes in at that number, they can't do something. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think they've got to get some of these other deals done, but there's other ways around that. And it's not necessarily Drew Brees' fault. I think it's some of the other deals they've done that have caused some of the issues.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. The $21 million dead money is what it is at that point. And a lot of that is renegotiating his deal to allow other deals to be made.
In the past.
And that's what people have to realize. When you talk about the $21 million in dead money, how many times have they gone to Drew Brees and said, hey, can we change a bonus here? Can we move some money here? And of course, they kick the can down the road. Well, eventually, when he retires, that's going to come due.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue that they've got in the future. And I think it could work out if, say, they believe Taysom Hill's the guy and they want to make him the long-term future, and say, let's hypothetically say this is Drew Brees' last year. What I see them possibly doing is signing Taysom Hill after next year, assuming they get him back in the fold this year. And then they go to him to do a long-term deal, and they backload it. That first year, it's going to be very team-friendly, very cap-friendly, and they eat the Drew Brees
21
dead money.
Right.
And basically you have what amounts to an elite quarterback level pay, a piece of the pie for about $25 million, and then they get back into the bigger deal with Taysom Hill.
To your point of $25 million, if he takes $25 million, he's taking the same amount of money he took last year.
I can see him doing that.
Okay. If he takes 20 to 22, he's even taking less money when other quarterbacks are going to be making more.
Yeah. I don't know what the number's going to be. I don't know, and I don't think it's an issue. I think people are focusing way too much on that. I think they're concerned about all these other players.
Right.
And I think there's other ways that they can get around the cap issues they've got and still keep everybody involved. They do it every year.
Well, Loomis has been a genius at it. I mean, again, whether you like Loomis, you don't like Loomis, one thing you got to say is, again, when it comes, he is the master of the cap and has been. through lean times, through the best of times, he's always been able. There's never been a situation where if Peyton would have gone to Loomis that he would say no because we don't have enough money.
Right, and look, I think the one issue that I've got this year that I want to see how it plays out is, I personally think Andres Pete will probably be moving on because they don't feel like they can justify what he's going to get on the open market to bring him back. What do they do at guard? That's a starting offensive lineman. Do they feel Nick Easton is the guy? He's already under contract, so you have him under contract. You've got that in the cap. You've got Cameron Tom, Will Clapp, a couple of young prospects. So you've got 3 options already under contract.
Yes.
Do you feel comfortable plugging those guys in there? Those are the kind of things I think that Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton and the Brain Trust have to figure out going forward, because Von Bell's going to come up. They got to pay him at Ramczyk, all these guys down the road. But right now, the biggest one to me is Andres Pete and what they do along the offensive line, because that's been a strength of this team, and it's got to continue to be a strength that they want to continue to try to challenge for Super Bowls.
Just for the audience purposes, unrestricted free agents: Drew Brees, Teddy Bridgewater, A.J. Klein, Eli Apple, Ted Ginn Jr., Andres Pete, P.J. Williams, pardon me, Zach Strief, Zach Line, not Zach Strief, who is
he just retired.
He just retired.
Yeah.
Von Bell, and Patrick Onome, Stephon Anthony, Josh Martin, Manti Te'o, David Onyemata, Noah Spence, Dwayne Washington, DJ Swearinger. A few of those guys were just add-ons at the end. Onyemata is obviously a keeper there. So there's a handful of players that's a part of this core of this team that are unrestricted free agents this year. Ginn may retire. He's 35 years old.
Sure.
You figure Drew's coming back. Teddy's gone. A.J. Klein, you figure they want him back. Up in the air on what they're going to do with Eli Apple. But you mentioned Andres Pete, P.J. Williams. Again, that's a up in the air deal. I'm sure they want Von Bell back, and again, David Onyemata is another guy you got to feel is a must-have here.
Yeah, I think Onyemata is a guy they would love to have back. I don't think they have to have him back. I don't think he's a must.
Right.
Sean Payton has those lists. I don't think he's a must. I think he's a want. And I think the cornerback situation is very much fluid, very much in flux. What do they do there? You've got 2 guys on that list, unrestricted free agents, P.J. Williams
and Eli Apple.
What do they do there? They got Janoris Jenkins. Do they want to pay him a certain amount of money?
And he's on a 1-year, $11 million deal, if I'm not mistaken, which means, again, and he's on the other side of 30.
Exactly. So
the other
a lot of question marks.
Right. Do you extend him for cap purposes? Does he want to be extended? He's an unrestricted free agent next year. So they're obviously, again, it's murky waters there on that.
Yeah, I think there's question marks galore in the secondary and especially at cornerback, and that's a critical position.
Right. And then the other part of it is giving Drew more weapons. Okay, and again, adding some speed to this team on offense, especially at the wide receiver position. I've been talking about the fact they're probably going to need to go out in free agency and get a receiver, but they're probably going to have to go in the draft to get a receiver as well.
They might do both.
Right. I think they're going to have to do both.
They very much do both. Sean Payton said something to Peter King at the Super Bowl. I've covered Payton long enough. When he says certain things, a little light bulb will go off in my head.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, he was asked about the matchup between the Chiefs and the 49ers. Peter asked him about that. And the first thing Sean Payton said was, the perimeter cores on both these teams have such speed. And he said, when we played the 49ers, we could feel their speed on the sideline. We could feel it. And he talked about Deebo Samuel and Mostert, the running back. And that resonated with me. I think he's going to try and do something like that.
I agree with
this
you.
offseason. Now, I think the good thing is with the Saints, they've got their number 1 receiver. They've got their big dog.
Right.
So they don't have to pay a fortune for second and third receivers. They're going to be role players, guys. And I think one of the guys that they're going to try and make into that is Deontay Harris. I think they view him as a guy that could end up being like their poor man's version of Tyreek Hill.
Okay.
A speed merchant. I mean, this guy can fly. We saw them use him. I was going to bring that up when we were talking about the book. I mean, the play that Taysom Hill hit him on, the 50-yard play against the Vikings, I mean, they used him specifically to get matched up against Xavier Rhodes. They knew Xavier Rhodes struggled in transition.
Yes.
He's a big corner. He's got talent, but he's not the quickest guy. They got Deontay Harris, and if they felt good enough to use him in that situation for the biggest play of the entire game, they know that this kid can. It's the moment's not too big for him. They've got bigger plans for him. So that's a guy I think that'll work into the mix as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you about the Peter King interview, because I thought the same thing about the speed aspect of it. And of course, we saw that. We saw that throughout the season. Okay, we saw that. And when Breeze has done more with less than any other quarterback I've ever seen. When you talk about undrafted free agents, guys that have been pulled out the scrap heap, that have been part of this offense, and it's made it work. We can go down a long litany of names from Lance Moore to others that have been a real big part of this offense. Let's talk a little bit about Taysom Hill, because that's the other comment. Teddy Bridgewater, we'll get into it in a moment, because everybody believes that, as I do, he's going to move on. I'm of the opinion that I haven't seen enough from Taysom Hill. How's Taysom Hill going to react when again teams are game planning against him? When defensive coordinators are going to try to make him stay in the pocket and be able to read a defense? I will say this: you can see the work ethic. You see him much more accurate than we saw when he first came to the Saints. Yep. You see him catching the football again with his hands, something he didn't do when he first came to the Saints. So you know he's got a work ethic and he works hard. The question is, a guy that's thrown 15 passes in his career. Dalton Hilliard's thrown more passes, and completed more passes with the Saints than Taysom Hill. How is he the heir apparent here? You've obviously talked to Peyton a lot about this. You're in the locker room. Tell the audience why you believe he's the heir apparent.
Well, I think some of the things you just brought up, I think, give you confidence that he can be that guy. Now, no one knows if he can be a successful or a star.
But this is a Super Bowl caliber team still, and if Breeze walks away,
but you don't know anybody is going to have a question. If you draft, what's the guy's name from
Jordan
Oregon?
Love
or Herbert? Yeah.
Right.
Do you know for a fact that he's going to end up being a star?
No, absolutely not.
There's a gamble with him every
there
take.
is no doubt about
I think
that.
there's way more. There's less risk with a guy you've had in your building for 3 years, who you've seen his work ethic, you've seen that he's been in Drew Brees' hip pocket the entire time. Someone that just has the intuition to understand this is what I need to do. Not everybody that comes in the Saints building does that with Drew Brees. They don't. This is a guy
they don't attach themselves to him,
and have the mental stamina to keep up with him.
Right.
This guy does. They've seen that. They've seen they chart every practice throw he makes. They chart every preseason throw. This isn't like a guy that everybody keeps focusing on the 13 passes he's made. He played quarterback at Brigham Young. He's played quarterback before at a high level. He was a Heisman Trophy guy. I mean, he was a very successful. He had injuries that sidelined him, and he's gotten better every year as a quarterback. They see that.
Okay.
So there's not. It's not like they're blindly going into this throwing. And they also will tailor the offense. And I think that's the most important thing is the offense that we see Taysom Hill running out of right now and Drew Brees is running. This is Drew Brees' offense. It's going to be different. It's no different than Lamar Jackson. If you go back and look at his numbers, when he came in for Joe Flacco his rookie season, his numbers were very pedestrian.
Right.
His rating was 84.5. He got sacked 16 times. I think he had 7 touchdowns and about 3 interceptions or something like that. Very average. Greg Roman, the offensive staff, had a whole year to tailor the offense around him, and he's the MVP of the league. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Taysom Hill, but when you tailor the offense, it's going to be enhanced to his skill set. And that's the one thing, another thing I've learned in this book process is the Saints do that better than anybody. Robert Meacham, the San Diego Chargers, signed him away, tried to make him a number 1 receiver, and he was such a bust out there that they cut him after 1 year. 1 year they cut him. He was back in New Orleans because they didn't know how to utilize him to his skill set. Robert Meacham with the Saints never ran a route that caused him to break down and cut. That's not what he does well. He can't transition and make breaks. He gets covered when he does that. They always had him running go routes, long routes, almost like when you're rounding second base. He can do those because he's a straight line speedster. They never asked him to run a route. That's the thing they'll do with Taysom Hill. They're not going to ask him to do the things that he's not good at. It's no different than Drew Brees. Drew Brees doesn't have a monster arm. The knock on him was he never had a strong arm. There's certain things. He's never asked to do those things, and he's become a Hall of Famer. So the Saints offensive staff will tailor the offense to Taysom Hill, and the windows will be much wider with Taysom Hill than they would be for a normal quarterback. He's not going to have to be Drew Brees accurate. No one's going to be Drew Brees accurate. And so people are focusing on what he can't do instead of what he can do. And that's a big tenet of Sean Payton and his offensive philosophy is let's get these guys to do what they can do.
Well, to your point, we saw it this year with Teddy Bridgewater. We saw the offense evolve within the first part of the season when Bridgewater came in and tailor what he was doing to what Bridgewater's strengths were.
Exactly. Look at Teddy when he came in the Rams game.
Right.
How bad he looked.
And then
once they had a week to tailor the offensive game plan to what he did, how much better he looked.
Absolutely.
That's been my point all along with Taysom Hill. Teddy Bridgewater is a very good quarterback. I think he's smart to take advantage of what happened here this year and cash out.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's going to have the same success when he goes somewhere else when he doesn't have this offensive staff. This offensive staff's probably the best in the NFL. It's one of the most creative in the NFL. They make players look a lot better than they are, and it's proven their track record when people leave here, like Jimmy Graham, who was an all-pro, has been an average tight end when he left here. Lance Moore left. He did not do anything like he did here. I think Teddy Bridgewater will have the same type of drop-off once he leaves.
There are those that watch things from afar. There are those that cover the team. There are those like you that cover the team but have a chance to be able to kind of get intimate and get with Coach Payton, with Drew Brees, because you're writing these books, you've been involved in these books. There's on one of the national shows, I think it might have been Florio or Glazer, one of those, said that there'll be a splitting of time between Taysom Hill and Drew Brees this year, that Taysom Hill is going to get maybe 30% of the snaps. Do you anticipate that, knowing how Brees has been in the past, doesn't want to come off the field? I mean, I thought it was surprising when he came off the field this year, instead of putting him out at the wide receiver position, trying to get another weapon on the field for Taysom. Do you anticipate the splitting of time, and how do you think Brees will deal with that if ultimately it happens?
Well, I don't know if there's going to be a 30%. I don't think anybody's.
I don't think so.
I don't think anybody's come up with a number or anything like that. I just think it's just natural to assume his role is going to grow, and it's grown every year.
Yes.
And I think they see what he can do, the impact he can have in a game. I mentioned that play to Deontay Harris, that long pass. The reason they called that play with Taysom Hill, and the reason they took Drew Brees out of the game on that is when Drew Brees is in the game with Taysom Hill, the defense doesn't honor him as a playmaker. So there's one less guy.
Right.
It actually takes away the advantage you have of a running
There's
quarterback.
no doubt about that.
So when they take him out of the game, they actually used Will Clapp to come in to sell more of the run disguise. You have a heavy set on the offensive line. Vikings are thinking run. They cheat their safety down. They ended up with one safety deep, and that's why the Saints were able to get deep. The reason they ran that play with Taysom Hill wasn't because he has a stronger arm than Drew Brees. It's because they knew it would affect the defensive alignment.
Yes.
And when Taysom Hill's in the game, the defense has to honor the run.
Absolutely.
And they have to cheat a guy up. And a playmaker, a play caller like Sean Payton sees that, and he can take advantage of that. The candy store is open, and that's what he does.
Yes.
And I think he's intrigued by that long term. He's intrigued by, okay, now the balance he's going to have one day with Taysom Hill is how much can he run him and not get hurt. That's a huge factor.
And who's going to be behind him in case
right.
that happens.
And so those factors will all be down the road with him. But getting back to your point, I don't think Drew Brees will have any problem with it. And it goes back to what I said earlier in the program. He loves Taysom Hill. He respects him. They play golf together. They vacation together with their families. They are as close as anybody Drew's ever been with. And he respects him so much. I think he's very happy for the success he's going to have. And I think he will actually embrace that more than be worried about it. And I don't think it would be true of another player.
Right.
I know how Brees is wired. Brees is a competitor, but this kid's a little different.
He's kind of taking him under his wing.
Yeah, it's his guy. I mean, when Taysom threw that, if you go back and watch the broadcast tape of that 50-yard pass, Drew's the first guy out there.
It's in my mind's eye when you're saying it. I know.
Yeah, first
absolutely.
guy out there. I mean, he loved it. I mean, Drew Brees still wants to be the quarterback and captain of the team, but the fact is, Taysom Hill honors that. Taysom Hill respects that, and so there's not going to be
and you heard that from him this week when he was in multiple interviews this week, talking about the respect for the organization, the respect for Drew Brees, etc. We're going to come back. We'll continue with Jeff Duncan of The Athletic. We'll talk a little bit more about Taysom Hill, the possibility of what type of tender he's going to have on him. Will he leave? Will he stay? We'll get into some Kamara, talk about the possibility of Kamara. Does he go or does he stay? And then we're going to jump into some Pelicans and also some LSU, and we'll get into some college basketball as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Happy Mardi Gras to everybody. Let's hear for a few minutes. Let's hear something from our underwriters, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Again, special thanks to our underwriters. Jeff Duncan of The Athletic is our guest tonight. I'm your host, Eric Asher. All right, let's talk a little about Taysom Hill. Restricted free agent. There's been rumors the Saints will put a first-round tender on him. $4.5 million is the minimum the Saints will have to pay for that. Number one, do you think that he will get bites on the open market with a first-round tender? And do you think the Saints would get in a bidding war to keep him if they had to?
Well, here's the thing. If someone's going to come after Taysom Hill, they're going to have a pretty deep conviction on him, right?
Yes,
I mean,
that's
the
right.
skepticism we hear in New Orleans,
Right.
and this is a guy that's played in the building for 3 years and been with the Saints for 3 years. So that would take a team that has not worked with him to believe he is their future franchise quarterback. There's doubts here in New Orleans that he can be that, and he's worked in this system. So you'd have to have a team that have a real deep conviction, and then they'd have to have the offensive coaching staff and the wherewithal to make it work. You'd have to have an offensive coach like a Greg Roman that could build a system around him. I don't know if there's that many teams out there that have all that, that need a quarterback too, that could lure him away. He's very happy here. I think he knows he's got a good thing going. He could be the heir apparent, or at least have a shot at being the heir apparent. So I think I'll be interested to see what his market's going to be like. I think the Saints, the difference between tendering him as a first rounder or a second rounder is minimal to me. If you think this guy is your future, $1.5 million difference in salary means nothing in the grand scheme of things. You get him back at all costs and put the first round tender on him, and that's what I would do. I wouldn't want to run the risk of having to get into a bidding war when you do have some cap limitations right now, and that's what I think they'll end up doing. But I don't know what the market's going to be for him. I think he and his agent just want to see what it is. I mean, they owe it to themselves. Taysom Hill owes it to himself to see what his market value is.
What is the market for Teddy Bridgewater?
I also don't know if it's going to be as strong as everybody thinks it's going to be. I just don't know. I mean, I think there's a scouting term called trucks and trailers, right? Certain quarterbacks are trucks. They pull the rest of the team, and certain quarterbacks are trailers.
Right.
So I think Teddy Bridgewater's a trailer. I don't think he's a truck. And so you're going to have to find a team that's in a very good situation around him to be successful. There's some teams out there that he could fit in. San Diego could be one I think he would be a good fit in. I think he'd be a good fit at Tampa if they elect to move on from Jameis Winston, because they have some infrastructure around him. They have a very good coach in Bruce Arians that I think would work well with him. But there's only certain teams that even need a quarterback.
Right.
So there's not that many that need them, and then of those, do they see, I think Phillip Rivers is probably going to be the top target right now. Do they see Teddy Bridgewater as a future franchise guy? But I do think he's going to get a starting job somewhere. I just don't know how big the money's going to be. Somebody threw out $30 million the other day.
There's no way.
There's no way.
There's no way. 20 is probably,
yes.
I mean, that to me, somebody was asking me about that today on the radio show. No way he's getting $30 million. $20 million now. $20 million is probably about where he's at in terms of a team signing, unless people just go nuts. We've seen that, with teams that are quarterback starved, that maybe want to, see something in a quarterback, want to go after him. What do you think is the future of Alvin Kamara here in New Orleans? And the reason why I ask is there's been a history of running backs here within this franchise under Peyton, where he's moved on from those running backs. I mean,
Reggie Bush,
Darren Sproles, although Sproles was a little bit older. I mean, we've seen it. He's been able
Mark
to
Ingram just let move on.
Exactly. So you're talking about a guy, what is it, $15 million is right around what Zeke is getting a year. I mean, is he demanding Zeke money? I mean, is $10 million enough? Do you want to pay a running back like Kamara $10 million at this point? Will he put himself in a position where, he's going to look for more money on the open market? Because of, let's face it, running backs, life expectancy of running back is a very small life expectancy in the NFL. You got to get everything you can get while you can get it. And I just wonder if the Saints are going to be willing to ante up for Kamara. He's in the last year of his deal. Clutch Sports is now his agency. His agent has moved on to Clutch Sports. We know there's been a little contention with the situation with Anthony Davis and the organization with Clutch Sports, meaning the umbrella of the Saints Pelicans organization. What do you think happens there?
Well, I think a lot's going to come down to what the expectations are of Alvin Kamara and what he thinks. What will he accept? Because knowing Mickey Loomis and how he operates, they're going to have a number that they feel is fair to Alvin Kamara, and I know that they want him back. I mean, they value him. They respect his work ethic and everything he's done. He's been very durable, hardly been hurt in his entire time. But they're going to have a number that they feel, whatever that is, and it's not going to be $15 million. I mean, they're not going to pay him elite running back money, I don't think. So will he accept that? Is he going to be accepting to that, or does he want to be a bell cow back and look at this in the second contract for a running back is very important in the NFL. That's where you make your money.
That's where you make your money.
I mean, he hasn't made, relatively speaking, much money.
He was a third-round pick.
Right. He's been so this is his chance.
Right. I think this is the year he makes $1 million, right?
Right.
This is the first time he's...
Right. He's been making less than $1 million. Considering how good he's been, he's outperformed his contract. What does he want? Is he wanting to cash out? Mark Ingram left for more money.
Right.
Now, he went to a good situation. They were obviously winning. But is that going to be what does Alvin Kamara want to do? Because I think I know what the Saints are going to want to do. They're going to want him back at a certain number, and they're going to give him that number. And if he isn't willing to work on that, I mean, there'll be some negotiating around it. But they will not, I think twice about moving on from him.
If they get an offer in this year's draft for an Alvin Kamara, I think that they think long and hard about that offer, to be honest with you. Especially if it's an offer, one of those Godfather offers that you can't refuse, one of those type offers where they can get multiple picks for him.
Yeah, I could see them doing that. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, because I think they feel like they can find a running back. I mean, the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl with Damian Williams as their lead back, and the 49ers, who they beat, had an undrafted free agent guy.
Most have bounced around the league for
6 teams. Right.
Exactly.
That's the running back position. Right. Now, they still like Alvin Kamara.
Sure.
But
it's not a question
there's a number that's going to have to.
Especially when you have other players you have to pay.
Right. I think Ryan Ramczyk is the top priority for this team.
Right. Do you think, and I asked this off the air, do you think he'll eventually swing to the left side?
Yeah, I think he'll be the replacement to Terron Armstead eventually.
Yes.
Whenever that is, I don't know. But he can do that, and he is an elite player. He is, I think, arguably probably one of the 5 best players on the team, most talented players. Among his position group in the league, he probably ranks as high as anyone on the team except for Breeze and Cam Jordan, maybe Marshawn Lattimore. So Ramczyk is a core piece that they've got to get, and that's going to not come cheap.
No, not at all.
And you can only afford to pay so many offensive linemen so much money.
Right.
So there's like a timing that comes into all this. I mean, they're paying Armstead big money right now. Larry Warford's still got a big number. They're getting good value out of the center position. That's one where they can
rookie contract.
That's why I think the Andres Pete thing is going to be interesting to see what they do. Do they feel like that's an area where they have to go a little bit cheaper with the guys they've got under contract as opposed to trying to go out and spend money?
And also the philosophy of how you build an offensive line with a Taysom Hill as opposed to a Drew Brees, where you want to be really heavy up front in the interior of the offensive line with the guards in the center, and whereas maybe with Taysom Hill you probably want to maybe be a little bit stout on the outside where they already are.
Right.
With again, guys like Ramczyk and Armstead, although Armstead's been often injured, and he's really got to come back and have an injury-free year this year.
Yeah, it'd be important for him to do that. I know he wants to, but it's been very difficult for him. I mean, he's one of these guys I've always felt like is offensive linemen, when they leave the NFL, they go one of two ways. They either blow up and get bigger, or they shrink down and get a lot smaller. I think he's going to be one of these guys when we see him 5 years after he leaves the NFL.
Yeah.
He's going to look like an accountant or something.
Yeah.
He's not going to look like a lineman. We've seen that with some former Saints linemen.
We have.
And Alan Faneca is one that, as a guy that doesn't even look like he played in the NFL.
Right.
I think that's Terron Armstead. I think his body the reason he breaks down, this is just my own personal opinion, is because he's too big for his frame, and he has these injuries. And it happens to a lot of guys, big guys in the league.
2 questions on LSU, and I want to get to the Pelicans. Your thoughts on Bo Pelini as defensive coordinator, if you would just morph right into Scott Linehan as the passing coordinator?
Well, I think, look, this is a huge set of hires. For Ed Orgeron, you got 2 guys that both have incredible credentials. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they're very credentialed guys, but they're both veteran guys. Whereas opposed to Dave Aranda, who's somewhat veteran but was a rising name in the profession at defensive coordinator, and of course Joe Brady, who was a shooting star and a young whiz kid who they caught lightning in a bottle with. So I don't know what the market was for those jobs. I don't know who else they turned down. but they're not the most inspiring hires on the perception front, right? They almost feel like guys that have been around. They're not on the way up. They're more like established coaches. But I would say this, Ed Orgeron has a track record now of making good hires. I mean, he's hired a bunch of guys, and I do think the other thing that's interesting about these hires is Scott Linehan comes from an NFL background, and they have a bunch of NFL coaches on this staff. We've talked about it on your program before. This staff matches up with the SEC level staffs. That wasn't the case under Les Miles. So Scott Linehan certainly has the credentials. Now, can they make it work with 19-year-old kids?
Right.
I don't know. We're going to find out.
Well, it's attractive anytime you're trying to get to the NFL to have NFL members, staff members on your current staff that were former NFL staff members that may have a reputation there. As far as Pelini goes, we know he's very, very heavy in terms of defensive line. When you look at the returning players on this team and what they've gone out and recruited, they've been very, very heavy along the defensive line, which probably tells you they're going to go to a 4-3. That's what his forte is. He has a track record based on what he's done to be able to put guys in, especially look at LSU when he was here, putting guys in the pros on that defensive line. It'll be interesting to see what's happening there. And, of course, Orgeron said he wanted someone with an NFL pedigree to come in and be part of his offensive staff.
Yeah, look, I think that affects recruiting, right? If they're going to be in the quarterback game and try and get elite-level quarterbacks, future Joe Burrows, they're going to have someone that has NFL credentials. Scott Linehan has been in quarterback rooms with some of the best in the game.
Yep, no doubt.
So that'll help sell recruits, especially at the quarterback position and they've got to solve that. To me, that's a big question with LSU going forward. Who's the quarterback? We know it's going to be Miles Brennan, but we don't know how he's going to react once he gets in the lab.
But you would think with this offense, you should have the ability to attract the best quarterbacks in the nation.
Should, yeah.
Okay.
How much is it going to continue to be carried over, though? How much? We're going to find out a lot about Joe Brady, how much he impacted, and also just how great Joe Burrow was going forward.
There's no doubt.
Because neither one of them is going to be there.
Right. To Joe Burrow, before we move on to the Pelicans, what is your take on this cloud around this right now about going to Cincinnati, leverage, not going to Cincinnati? Look, the kid's an Ohio kid. And at the end of the day, do you walk away from your home? I know it's the quote-unquote home state, okay? We know that Cincinnati has been a horrible franchise. But, it is what it is. You're the first overall pick. There's something to be said for that. What do you think happens? He signs, holds out, tries to get traded. What?
I'll say this. Well, the first things I heard when I got to the Super Bowl in Miami from some connected people was that this was a possibility, that he would try to pull an Eli Manning and get to another market. It doesn't sound like Joe Burrow's character, though. It doesn't. It sounds out of character to me because he's an Ohio kid. I could see him becoming a legend up there.
Me too.
If he can turn that thing around. And I think he will. I mean, wherever he goes, I think he's going to be a star quarterback in the NFL. He's got all the ingredients to be successful. I don't know how much of it's just whispers and draft rumors and how much is real. But he's got the best agent in the business. I mean, he's signed with CAA.
Yes,
those guys know how to do it. They're the ones that orchestrated that thing with Eli Manning. So I wouldn't say that behind closed doors there hasn't been that kind of discussion. But it seems out of character for me because Joe Burrow is such a strong leader. I think he feels like he could go into that situation and be successful. So we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be fascinating to see. If he goes to Cincinnati Bengals, I don't see how the Bengals cannot draft him.
Right. You have to.
I don't see how they can.
Chase Young is sitting there.
How do you sell that to your fan base?
You can't.
When this kid's right there and you're 2 hours away.
No doubt. I would agree. All right, let's talk Pelicans. Look, they've been in playoff mode since the 13-game losing streak. Okay, I mean they really have. But they're 23-32 at the mythical break. 17-10 over their last 27. 6-4 over their last 10. Since Zion has come into the fold, they're 5-5 in the last 10 there. He's had back-to-back 30-plus point performances. He's averaging 22 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, and 56% from the field, which is really. They're 11th place in the West right now. They're 5.5 games back of Memphis. They have 27 games left, folks. 13 of those are at home, but they're 11-17 at home thus far. A lot of that was, again, pre-Zion. And, of course, they start that West Coast swing with Portland, Golden State, and the Lakers coming up. They have the easiest schedule left in the NBA, according to the NBA. Let's talk about where they are right now. We can talk about what they happened before. How good is this team today as we get ready to be able to start the last 27 games of the season?
Well, I think they're one of the 8 best teams in the West. The problem is they're too far into too big a hole.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to overcome that as well as they're playing right now. When you watch this team, they've got talent. I mean, there's no doubt. It's coming together. That you can see them trying to feel rolls out. I think the rotation's getting settled a little better now that they've kind of gotten through the injury bug. The problem is they're not gaining any ground in the playoff race.
Right.
They're actually have lost ground a little bit on Memphis, and you have now Portland that's kind of resurrected its season, and they're involved. So it's a little misleading when we keep talking about them being back of. It's not just one team they're back of. There's other teams.
3 teams.
Yeah, there's 3 teams between them.
It's Memphis, Portland, and San Antonio.
Right. So you're involved with everybody. You
Right.
have to be better. So
Yes.
it's actually more complicated.
They almost have to go, and Jeff, tell me if you agree with this. They on a 13-game losing streak. They almost have to go on a 10 or 11-game winning streak.
Correct.
Okay?
Exactly, to get back in.
And doing it against teams in the West. I think 17 of their last 27 are against teams from the West, if I remember that off the top of my head. So again, you have to feast on the West. And they play the Lakers a couple of times within that group as well. And
Well, they got to start stealing some wins, and they
Yes.
haven't been really doing that much lately. I mean, they've got to. They did against Boston the other night when they beat Boston. I thought that was a great performance, but it came against a team that was missing some key parts of their lineup. Dropping that game the other night at home, I thought was
Oklahoma
a bad.
City? Yes.
Yeah, the Oklahoma City loss. They just don't match up well with Oklahoma
they
City.
don't.
This is a big road trip right off the bat.
Right.
I think they go out there. Can they get 2 wins?
they've owned Portland.
Right.
Okay.
They've had, but now they got to play them out
Right,
there.
right.
Portland's playing much better.
Right. And they've lost 3 to the Pelicans.
Exactly.
They've got to get this one.
Yeah, so I think if they can go 2-1 on this trip,
right.
and drop the game against the Lakers, assuming they drop that game, you feel good about yourself. You get back home,
Right.
maybe reel off a bunch of wins. But I think ultimately, if I'm going to take the big picture on the Pelicans, at this point, I don't even care if they make the playoffs. That doesn't mean anything to me. If they get in there, it's good experience for this young team. I don't think there's a downside to them making it. But ultimately, they just need to play better and more consistently.
Yes.
They need to start thinking long term.
Okay.
Can we see them start to figure out that? And I think we're seeing it right now, Eric. They're figuring out that Zion Williamson is the guy.
Yes, of course.
It's happening, right?
Right.
I mean, you can always see the other players realizing this is a unicorn. He is the guy. We need to make him the guy.
Yes.
And now, how does that work with Brandon Ingram? How do they figure it out?
I think
how
they
those
can
guys play?
coexist.
I do too, but that's what I want
Right.
to see over the next 3 or 4
Yeah.
weeks is that, not necessarily whether I could care less if they make the playoffs. If I'm a Pelicans fan, I'd like to see it happen. I think it'd be a good experience. But they're going to get in the playoffs.
You
and
want them to get
beat.
better every game.
Yeah, they got to get better. Just play better. Start
Right.
to figure it out. So next year, when they get Zion back, and he's still not in total condition
I
yet,
agree
you
with
can
that.
tell.
Right.
When they get him back next year, get a full offseason of fitness in him, and determine what roles, who's going to be on this roster, because I think they're going to make some changes this summer.
Well, they have to. I mean,
Right.
when you think about it right now, Favors is in the last year of his deal, and that's a huge piece there.
Right.
I would argue right now, outside of Zion, you cannot lose Favors.
No, I think he'd be a great guy to have back.
He's the only real legitimate center they have on this roster right now. And when you play those 2 guys together down low, they are tough to beat. They eat offensive rebounds. They basically own the paint when Zion and Favors are on the court at the same time. The one thing I worry about Favors is he's down to 20, 24 minutes a game right now. How much left is, even though he's not even 30 yet.
I know.
But yet he runs like an old man. He's got a lot of tread on that tire.
Yes.
And that's the unfortunate thing. But he seems to be, look, Griffin had a vision. He's the perfect player to accompany a guy like Zion inside.
Yeah, and he wanted some of these veteran guys like Favors, like J.J. Redick,
Right.
that have been winning cultures.
Culture-driving
come
vets.
in, yeah, and they've worked out perfectly in that regard. So I don't care if they get in the playoffs and get swept by the Lakers in the first round or the Clippers or whoever it is. That means nothing to me. I want to see them start to figure out who's going to be part of this team long term. Who are the
Yes.
core pieces? Who can they move? Because they've got a lot of, I think, duplicate parts. They got a lot of same swing man,
Right.
a lot of guards that kind of
too
have the
many
same
guards.
skill sets.
Too many guards.
They got to figure out who they need to move on
Right.
from and determine who's going to be the core of this team going forward. That's what needs to happen over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I would agree. If Gentry does not make the playoffs, does he return?
Yeah, that's the question I think everybody wants to know, and I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. I don't know if Alvin is going to be the long-term coach of this team, whether it happens next year or 2 years from now. I'll be surprised if he doesn't move into some kind of front office role, some kind of consulting role, director of basketball operations. I don't know what role it would be, and whether that happens this offseason or the next. But I think that's an eventuality out there.
Well, I will say one thing. Whatever they do with the staff, Fred Vinson, he needs to be, as much as when you talk about what Fred Vincent has done, I mean, not just here with the guys today, he is a heck of a shooting coach. And
done great work.
And he has done great work for this team. And he's a guy that I would think that no matter what, you got to try to hold on to him, because whether it was Monty Williams' staff or again whether it was with Gentry, he's been kind of a holder that's done a great job with the players that he's look at Brandon Ingram, look at Lonzo Ball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and
you go
he
right
works
down the line.
extremely hard, Eric. I mean, he's one of the hardest workers on that staff. Has a lot of respect in the locker room. And I tell you, they got a good staff now. Their staff has been improved a lot over the last few years. There's been a lot of progress in the organization.
I agree.
And some of it you can't see, and especially you can't see it in the win-loss record, but there's a foundation that's been laid by David Griffin that I think gives this organization a chance for long-term success and sustained success, even though it hasn't happened this year.
Well, I think the mantra for the Pelican fans has to be "In Griff we trust."
Right.
Based off what he's done in the short amount of time here in New Orleans.
And I think the roster's got talent. I mean, we talked about it a second ago. You watch this team; they look like a playoff team to me. They have some lapses, and I think that comes from some of the younger players. That there's some focus lapses, but I think they've gotten a lot better in the last few weeks. Once Zion has figured out, this is the guy, and he's only going to get better. I mean, the numbers he's putting up right now are staggering to me when you consider it doesn't seem like they're running the offense through him at all. He's getting a lot of it. I remember one of the Pelicans executives comparing him to me, saying he's going to be like Draymond Green with rocket boosters coming out of his butt. That was the description. He's better than that.
Oh, yeah. The second jump is incredible.
Right. What they get out of him, though, is a guy that they don't have to run the offense.
No, you don't.
He gets numbers and gets his points.
He's the ultimate garbage man.
Yeah. Gets them posting up.
Yep.
He'll get it go into the offensive glass.
Right.
He'll fill the lane on the break. He can score in so many different ways, and he doesn't have the ego to have to dominate the ball.
Yes,
and I think that's a big part of it. For being a star athlete, he doesn't necessarily demand the ball.
I got a minute and a half. I hate to put you up against the clock. LSU in a little bit of a free fall, losing 4 of their last 5 games they shouldn't have lost. Last night against Kentucky, that's a very good Kentucky team. Your thoughts on LSU? Do they make the tournament? Will they come out of there? Again, look, they're at 18 wins. They need 2 more wins to 20 wins. In a decent conference, that's pretty good. What are your thoughts there?
Well, they got to turn it around quickly.
Right.
I mean, 4 or 5 losses. The Kentucky loss didn't bother me. I thought they played well. But the SEC's been wide open the last few weeks, topsy-turvy. That loss at Auburn was heartbreaking.
Right,
I mean, that was a brutal loss.
And you can't lose to Alabama, and you definitely can't lose to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, exactly. You can't. I think they've got to steal a win here coming up soon.
They have 5 games left.
I think if they get to 20 wins, they get in the tournament. What their seeding will be, I don't know.
Right.
They're a talented enough team. They just don't have much depth. They're a lot like a lot of college basketball teams. It's wide open this year.
Right.
If LSU gets in the tournament, they could win 2 or 3 games.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt, depending on the matchup.
Right, because it's just a crazy year.
Right.
I mean, I think we could see this year Dayton winning the national title,
Oh.
or San Diego State
Right.
could win the national championship. It could be a Cinderella team
I
like
don't
that,
think there's any
win it
doubt.
all because it's so wide open.
Whispers that NCAA is not done with LSU. What are you hearing?
Same thing. I've heard the same thing. I don't think they're done with any of the teams
Right.
that were involved in that FBI probe. I think there's going to be some letters of notice coming down, and so I would say they're not out of the woodwork in the next 6 months.
That's what I hear as well. Jeff, one more time, tell us about the books and when the new book's coming out.
Yeah, and you can find it right now. You can pre-order it online at Amazon.com. It's called Peyton and Breeze, the men behind the greatest offense in NFL history. It'll come out October 13th. And looking forward to that release, and I'm looking forward to having it done.
Yeah,
too,
I know you
I'm
are.
still writing it as we speak.
There you go. Thanks for being with us tonight here
thank
on
you.
Inside New Orleans Sports. Jeff Duncan of The Athletic. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, Pelican Sports Television every Friday night at 9 o'clock. That's 9 p.m. You can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeart Radio app. That is noon to 2 weekdays. Listen live down to the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of this program can also be seen at ericasher.com. Thanks to Jeff Duncan for joining us on the program tonight. Also to our great underwriters who again underwrite this program, as well as the WLE production staff, including Rod Yeager, Jim Dotson, Naila Jones, Alex Chacon, William Hill, and Richard King. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Happy Mardi Gras to everybody. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.